Many people are truly astonished at the sight of green oases, high mountain peaks, Falaj irrigation channels, and broad expanses of date groves. They wonder how oases like these could have existed in Oman since the 3rd millennium BC, in a land with such harsh and challenging terrain. This question was a mystery to scholars and experts for many years. Until the coordinator of the Omani Oases project, Professor Heinz Gaubi, found the answer. Working in collaboration with Sultan Qaboos University and a number of German universities and research centers, he was able to reveal how Oman's oases came to be established. Forts and castles were built to protect the oases' precious resources from raiders, while water and date palms provided these green havens with a sort of life belt. This is the story Professor Heinz Gaubi tells us.
In the next days, we are going to visit a few important oasis settlements in the Dakheliye and the Sharqiye. Our starting point is Rustak. From there, we follow the Wadi Banu Auf and come to Balad Seed. Balad Seed is a spring or Ain, a fat village.
And it's a unique settlement.
It's a unique settlement up there and very, very old. Then we cross the mountains and come to Misfat al-Abriyin, above Hamra. We come then down to Hamra, make a short visit to Birkat al-Maus, where we meet Dr. Afri. And then we go via Iski, down here, across here, a new road, and come finally to Ypres. This way, which is now also completed. And from Ypres, we go to Modaire. So, that's what we will do for the next days, and hopefully we arrive safely home.
Okay, let's go.
Factors such as the nature of the land, the terrain, climatic conditions, and the availability of natural resources like water and fertile soil played a crucial role in determining the character and features of northern Oman's ancient oases. Some of the oases are located in extremely rugged high mountain areas that are hard to reach, and Heinz Gaubi's team are not too confident that they can negotiate the highest and most difficult tracks safely. The village of Balad Sit is 1,000 meters above sea level, and it is one of the most important oases as far as the team are concerned. Gaubi hopes to find clues to the nature and origins of the Balad Sit oasis.
This is a fairly large settlement. I would say about 50 houses minimum on this side and that side. And we are standing now here in front of the mosque, which is this building. It is typically elevated for Omani mosque, as they are always built. And the pottery we found here goes back to the 14th century. So at least now 600 years ago, there were people living here already. And I assume that they got the water in the dry period, because here it's too big that they could just live a short time here. They got it from the wadi, so they had to dig wells to get the water.
We are the Urban Planning Institute, and our approach was the approach for the whole oasis to understand the cultural heritage, the archaeological sites, but in the same time the landscape, the cultural landscape, mainly the irrigation system, the afflage system, but also to integrate this, or to integrate it with the new development, because in the moment the traditional oasis is in a very fast transformation process.
Graves and the remains of ancient burial grounds offer historical evidence of Balad Sid's past. We can see graves dating from both the pre- and post-Islamic periods. The oasis cultures in Oman developed over thousands of years. Their inhabitants' way of life was compatible with their environment.
Balad Sid is an oasis that whose water comes from springs high up in the mountains. Here we stand at the collection point of the water of 7 different springs that are about 400-500 meters above where we stand. And these springs provide Balad Sid per day with more than 500 cubic meters of water. But you must think about really the energy and the work that went into creating this wonderful system. And look at these steep mountains, what immense work it took the people to simply bring the water down to their settlement.
This cultural diversity associated with the traditional way of life is under threat, because all the oases in northern Oman are undergoing a process of rapid change. Their character, architecture, and lifestyles are being radically transformed. This is wheat. Yes. And we grow garlic. We grow garlic and wheat. That's in the summer, as well as radishes and onions. The water comes from here. There are springs there, 8 springs, and all the water from them flows along one falaj irrigation channel. I myself built a house and made a rope which linked the Jabal, the mountain, to the village. We sent stones down in a kafir, a sort of basket made from palm leaves, and sometimes we brought the stones by donkey. What secrets do these oases conceal? And how were the Omanis able to create such a rich civilization over the years since the 3rd millennium BC? With its capital, Muscat, the Sultanate of Oman is situated in the extreme southeastern corner of the Arabian Peninsula. There is evidence that its oldest oases date from the 3rd millennium BC. Today, some of the oases have been abandoned. There have been numerous migrations to the new towns and cities. At the same time, other oases are still thriving after hundreds of years. The Hajar mountain range surrounds Oman's interior like an impenetrable barrier, rising to a height of over 3,000 meters. Some oases have been able to survive for thousands of years in the lands behind these barren mountains and on their summits. How can this be so? To find the answer, the oases are being studied by agricultural experts from Germany's Kassel University.
10 years ago, when we started work in Oman, everybody was claiming that the Falat system was inefficient, that modern irrigation systems were much more efficient. But due to the several story of the oasis agriculture, it turns out that we have irrigation water use efficiency of between 85 and 90%, which makes Falat system among the most efficient irrigation system that we have worldwide. Plus, if well managed, it's a system that prevents salinization.
Misfat al-Abrayin is 950 meters above sea level. This oasis dates from pre-Islamic times. The village of Misfat al-Abrayin can be entered from several different directions. An ancient fort overlooks the village and its narrow lanes and alleyways. All the houses are built of local stone on foundations of solid rock.
Misfat al-Abrayin is like Balazet, a spring oasis. That means the water that comes here comes from springs up in the mountains. And that's why it's so green. Nobody can dig the water away or pump the water away. That's the wonderful thing about these spring oases. As far as the history or the origin of Misfat al-Abrayin is concerned, we can assume that all the spring oases are the earliest settlements in the mountains, because here men had water and water attracted men and plants. So this place here certainly was inhabited already in the pre-Islamic period. And if you look at the architecture here, it is different from Balazet. We don't have terrace houses. We have here very compact, densely built houses with small windows outside and inside these small, narrow lanes that connect the houses and connect the settlement with the outside.
The ceilings consist of palm trunks and the trunks of various other local trees, such as the kandal. The houses are built in a tightly packed mass, reflecting the close and intimate social relationships that are one of the major features of the oasis. The way in which the water is distributed is determined by the social structure of the oasis communities and the physical features of the area. The main aim being to safeguard the irrigation system. This meant that everybody had to cooperate with each other. As the communities grew and the populations increased, the falaj systems needed to be constantly expanded. The main course of the falaj determined the shape of the oasis and the location of its buildings. Letters and manuscripts used by Omanis in former times enable us to understand how the oases were able to exist for hundreds or even thousands of years. Water, the basis and artery of life, was a word that frequently cropped up in old letters written from one sheikh to another, showing how meticulously regulated the oases were and how natural streams were converted into falaj systems that provided irrigation over distances of several kilometers. The old documents also contain details of the irrigation timetables and the amount of water required by the different cultivated plots, thus showing how the Omanis developed the facilities at their disposal hundreds of years ago. A study being carried out in Ypres by Dr. Daniela Ottman and Rula Al-Harfi deals with a number of fields including the architecture of the oasis. The study is supported by the German University of Technology in Muscat. Here, they are meeting Professor Heinz Gaubi, coordinator of the Omani Oasis project in Ypres. Several distinct land areas here played a significant part in determining the main elements of the oasis. The Al-Manzafa and Al-Kanatir quarters form the heart of Ypres' Old Town, which is near the junction of two wadis. This feature accounts for the layout of the Old Town, together with factors such as water distribution rights, the social structure, and the course taken by the falaj as it threaded its way between the fields, houses, and public utilities.
So you must look at it always. Here was a ceiling. This was the room, and on top was the room.
Yeah.
You know, but just now, we have here similar to that what we saw in Mudairat. It's a late Islamic architecture, we can say. It means many elements come together. Here it is important that we have, when these buildings were constructed, we had a peak of the economic development of the areas that were controlled by the Omanis. In the Yariba time and in the earlier Busaidi time. There, the whole area between the Persian Gulf and East Africa was more or less controlled by the Omanis. And so, of course, this large area with different local traditions merged into a new style of architecture in elaborated buildings like that. So we have, of course, this style certainly came from India, but the earliest examples we have there in Spain, in Al-Andalus. So it really, it's the peak, the end of traditional development of certain typical Islamic styles.
Centuries-old mosques and mansions built of mud and stone indicate that this was an advanced culture. The falaj systems and date cultivation brought prosperity and trade to Oman's towns and cities. There are still extensive areas in Oman that have not been seriously studied in any significant way. remains of the large mansions in the Al Manzafa quarter bear eloquent testimony to Ypres' past. These big houses used to belong to Omani merchants who plied their trade between Oman and Zanzibar in East Africa.
Well, what we also can see here in this example in Al Mansafa is a very, let's say, precious example of how to build from the foundation up to the higher floors. The higher floors, the bigger the structure needs to be in the ground floor, of course. Here in the ground floor we have wall thicknesses of about 1 meter, which is built out of stone with serruche-like mortar in between to hold it up, keeps it very strong. So the second floor now can be reduced in size because it doesn't have to hold so much as the ground floor. And everything depends on the environmental factors. So our environmental factors are water, air, and the sun. So in that regard, also the buildings have to adjust to the system that is around it, the environment. The city cluster of Al Mansafa, where all the houses are, only makes sense when we have a farm belt around it, because it's like a green belt around it that also enhances the microclimate that we have inside the village. So the farmland protects basically the city and the village. And the farmland also gives all the food to the animals and to the people. So it's like a cycle, an environmental cycle that brings it all together.
Ypres' Grand Mosque was built towards the end of the 17th century AD. Other features of this ancient oasis include its houses and old souk, with its little shops or stalls, surrounded by orchards and date palms. Many of the mud houses have now been abandoned and are on the verge of collapse. The old central district of the Wilayat of Alhambra was originally built along the top of a rocky slope in the 17th century AD. Today, that part of the old town lies deserted, and many of its houses are in ruins or in very poor condition. The old town of Alhambra is situated on the lowlands to the southeast of the mountains, which provide it and its oasis with a natural protective barrier. There are several watchtowers around the central areas of the oasis. Alhambra Oasis is rectangular in shape, owing to the course of the Falaj, which flows through the houses, mosques, fields, and public and private washing areas. The Falaj acted as a sort of road or central axis, and the rest of the oasis developed around it. The oasis and historic town extend for 7 hectares and contain around 200 dwellings. The souk is outside the town's eastern outer gate and is said to be 200 years old. Inside the houses in the Alhambra oasis, you will find staircases, as well as ventilation apertures that are designed to enable the inhabitants to cope with the high temperatures during the summer months. The houses have a basement floor that is used as a store. The upper floors are used for living accommodation, and their features include small ornate wooden alcoves. Most of the houses are built of adobe mixed with straw, while their exterior is coated with Omani sarouj, a kind of local cement. There are few windows on the ground floor. The first floor has two sets of windows, one at floor level and a smaller one higher up to enable the air to circulate more effectively. The semi-arid pasture land in the oasis areas offers a valuable habitat for wildlife, both fauna and flora, as well as a major source of food for grazing animals. The traditional practices related to land rights and use of the land have always ensured that the pastures are not overgrazed. However, the rising demand for meat consumption, new housing, roads, and other services and utilities has led to increased pressure on the natural grazing land. This has had an impact on the traditional agriculture of the oases, which depends on organic animal fertilizer to fertilize the crops.
Well, the animals are very important for the oasis because on the one hand they provide meat and sometimes milk to the families, and on the other hand their manure is used to fertilize the fields, and without the manure of the animals the fields would degrade, the soil fertility would go down. The problem that we perceive today is that animals depend still very strongly on grazing. And with the new developments in many regions of the mountains, grazing areas are successively cut through by roads or by new buildings, which is then pushing the animals to more remote areas or leading to overgrazing.
Hence, there is a vital need for better pasture management and animal husbandry practices in the oases.
No problem. We can do that at any point in time.
The Faculty of Agriculture at Germany's Kassel University has established a nursery to carry out applied research into tropical and subtropical crops. The nursery simulates the natural and environmental conditions of the different climatic zones and applies them to a wide variety of agricultural products. Traditional strains of Omani wheat are studied here, including some rare genetic strains. A rare new type of banana was recently discovered in Bir in Wadi Tiwi, in South Sharqiya Governorate. Similar to those found in Southeast Asia, it is living proof of Oman's long-standing trade ties with those regions in former times.
I think we have here something very special with respect to the banana. We have traditional germplasm that has the property of providing a phytochemical profile, a cocktail of chemicals that is produced once an infection happens from either a nematode or an insect or a fungal pest, and that kills that invader in a very short period of time. And we all have to realize that banana, commercial banana worldwide, is pretty much the dirtiest product, the dirtiest fruit in terms of environmental damages due to the high susceptibility of Cavendish banana to diseases. So for commercial banana, so any breeding efforts could greatly benefit from the knowledge and from the germplasm that has been preserved in Oman in the long term.
The agricultural systems in northern Oman are a shining example of sustainability. Developed over thousands of years, they are highly complex and are found in semi-desert oases consisting of small terraced plots of alluvial deposits framed within dry stone surroundings. They produce a wide variety of seasonal crops.
We are in front of three soil profiles that come from two mountain oases. One is the core oasis of Balazit in the northern Hadjar Mountains. And then we have on the left side here the soil from the oasis of Makta. They are quite different in terms of their profile depth. We have here a soil that is on a wheat oasis soil, and here two soils that are under date palm. Both have in common that they are man-made, that during centuries farmers have learned and then practiced how to build the terrace and how to put stones in the lower part of the profile and then wadi sediments in the upper part, and then enrich those wadi sediments with recycled manure. So a coupling of plant production and animal production that bring carbon, that bring nutrient from the outside of the oasis inside the oasis is a key feature of the traditional sustainability of Omani oasis systems. And we see that very clearly here, very dark soil that maintains the water for a long period of time. Some of the water drains and leads to the salts being washed out, which makes Oman oasis unique in terms of 2,000 years of irrigation without salinization.
The village of Wadi Bani Habib is on the Jabal al-Akhdar in the Dakhliya Governorate, some 50 kilometers from the historic city of Nizwa. It is one of the oldest human settlements in the Jabal al-Akhdar region. Wadi Bani Habib consists of two separate sections, Harat al-Bilad, the older part, and Harat al-Sab. Both have now been abandoned and are uninhabited. The village produces pomegranates, pears, and apricots. Most of its inhabitants are farmers or stock breeders. The Sabla, or communal meeting hall, and the mosque are at the entrance to the village, providing a public space for visitors. The houses are built on top of each other and welded together side by side. This reflects the harsh terrain and limited space available, as well as the inhabitants' easygoing attitude to neighbors' rights.
Maybe even that are older.
Yeah.
and what the real... Here we are in one typical village of Wadi Bani Habib. You can see here a house conglomerate which is based on the natural formation of the rocks of the mountain. The mountain creates the base and they are put on top of each other. Why? Because the protection of each other creates shade, it creates the climate in the hot period of the year, and it makes it livable in these houses without electricity in the former time. Very typical here is that the houses are built out of the natural rock, which you can find directly in the wadis and on the rock formation. The basements are made in big rock formation, big cubes like 40 to 60 by 80, and then the upper floors are created in smaller rock pieces, most of the time plastered in the natural material sarouche, what is typical material for plaster in Oman. One technical part of the houses, what is very typical for a traditional house in Oman, are the roofs, which creates the insulation for the inside space. It's created out of trunk of the trees. Here, for example, you can find them in the wadi and in the gardens, especially here where you have the green plantation, and then layers of sarouche and mud as a kind of insulation, and on top a layer of stone, big stones and small stones, to protect from the rain. This creates a very comfortable climate inside the house.
Harat al-Sab lies some 700 meters to the west of Harat al-Bilad. Because of the way it is laid out and the fact that it occupies a narrow area on a steep slope, the single-storied houses, with their low ceilings, are built side by side, with their entrances giving on to the open space inside the village. Nizwa is one of Oman's oldest historic cities, and for several centuries it was the country's political, cultural, and economic capital. Its main water supply came from Falaj Dares, one of the biggest and most important falages in Oman. This falaj was built during the reign of Imam Sultan bin Saif al-Yarubi I in the middle of the 17th century AD. Dr. Abdullah Al-Ghafri, an expert on the falaj systems, stresses the importance of water and the role it plays in Oman's oases. He describes how the Omanis were able to bring water over long distances through underground channels. Here, Dr. Abdullah is taking us on a trip to explore Falaj Dares's subterranean irrigation channels. Access to them is through the openings that are used for the regular cleaning and maintenance of the falaj.
This one is, as I said, 25 meters. You can see the water is running. Yeah. Even you can see the direction of the water. 26, 25 meters deep. And you can see that's still the sarouche, the old sarouche, is surrounded by sarouche. So this is dated from Yaruba time, from Imam Sultan bin Saif al-Yarubi. Yeah. And so Saif Sultan Yarubi. So that is the date. Almost this one is like 400 years, 400 years old, almost.
So actually what it means, there are different branches.
Yes.
Come together in the Dares.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the what they call it. This is the major one. Yeah. The major flow come from here. Yeah. There's another one longer than this one, but has less flow. Less flow. So in fact, this is the critical one because this is very important for them. Yeah.
The research that has been carried out, supported by other resources such as old manuscripts and letters, enables us to understand how meticulously water supplies have been regulated, distributed, and timetabled in Oman since time immemorial. It is by developing the falaj system, their traditional method of irrigation, that the Omanis have succeeded in creating a rich civilization in a harsh, water-poor environment.
If we could preserve this unique ensemble of buildings, everybody could see what really Oman was in the pre-modern period and how it functioned. That's important.
Preservation is the main topic, that the dwellings and the houses are not degrading anymore, to preserve them as they are. This is the first step. Second step could be restoration. Restoration with the material, what is there, natural as it was in the original place. Third step is to make them available for the local Omanis, to take part of it and to develop something sustainable.
In order to bring that forward into a future building knowledge that is oriented over the 1,000-year-old knowledge that we have gained during the centuries here in Oman.
The causes of the sustainability of Omani oases, and that we will continue doing to foster the preservation of those systems in the modern times, where there are interesting markets also in terms of certified Omani products.
Because the natural landscape, the cultural landscape, is the value of the country, it's the image of the country, it's the identity of the country. And if you lose this value, then you will lose also the value of tourism.
Now we can see why it is so vital to prepare a national strategy for conserving the green oases and traditional irrigation systems, as well as the local building styles, and protect them from the effects of the rapid changes and transformation taking place across the country. To do so, we need to safeguard and cherish the knowledge and wisdom that we have inherited from our forefathers over the millennia. The oasis represents the essence and history of Oman's civilization.